Welcome to Jackie's Craft Table. Hello and welcome. I'm creating another fun Christmas card today, and I'm returning to one of my very favorite stamp sets. It's from Altenew, and it's called Peony Bouquet. Now, these aren't winter flowers by any means. They bloom in the springtime, but I'm going to turn them into some bright red Christmas flowers. I've pulled out my little Memento dewdrop inks, and I'm starting first with the outline stamp for the main flower. This video is going to consist of a lot of stamping and absolutely no coloring, which is very unusual for me because I always like to do a little bit of coloring on my cards, but this card video is a little bit different today. So here is the outline of this beautiful peony, and I'm going to try and stamp out as many flowers as I can. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp out the small peony bud as well. I end up stamping each flower about twice. The stamps were kind of close together, so it was hard to get that little edge of that flower stamped. And then I'm going to flip the paper and stamp them again. I'm going to be creating lots of flowers for this card. Next, I'm going to use the stamp that puts down a base coat of ink on these flowers. And this is the fun part. This is where I'm using the bright red ink. It's called Ladybug from Memento. And you can see this ink going on the stamp quite clearly. It's very fun to see. I'm just kind of wiping these down, conditioning them to accept the ink. And I end up stamping those twice as well because I want it to be a bright scarlet happy red. I don't have a lot of stamps in my arsenal yet, but I'm slowly collecting them over the months. So I was looking in my stash for some flowers that I could use to make Christmas cards. I didn't really have anything, but I remembered this stamp set. I thought, I'm going to turn these into Christmas flowers and just see if it works out. And I think it worked out pretty well. You'll have to see what you think at the end of this video. So I'm just going through and stamping all of the base colors. I did 2 panels. I don't end up using all of these flowers, but I'm definitely saving them for another card. Now I'm going to start stamping with the layering stamps. And this is where you get your pretty dimension. So I'm pulling out the inner pieces to these stamps, and I'm going to stamp them up with darker colors. So you have to kind of look through the stamps to line them up with what you've inked up already. And that's the hard part. Once you get that set, then you just close the door and then you can just keep stamping with your Mini Misty. And I'm using a rhubarb stock color, and it's kind of a dark red color, kind of a purpley red. And it's just going to put ink down where the petals meet to give it more dimension. There, doesn't that look pretty already? Then I'm just going to flip the card again and do the same to the other flowers. It goes really fast once you get going, but I am doing a lot of stamping today. Now on to the next layer. This is going to be the very darkest color on these flowers. I'm going to be using a chocolate brown or a rich cocoa brown color on these. And I'm only stamping these stamps once because I don't want it to be too dark. But it doesn't add a lot of pretty dimension. And then I flip my card panel again, and I'm going to stamp out the rest of my flowers. The first time I used this stamp set, I just stamped the outline, and I colored in the rest with my Prismacolor pencils. I'll link to that video at the end of this video. You'll have to check it out and see what you think of that. There are 2 more pieces of the stamp set to this bud. I'm going to use a light green color for this. It's called New Sprout. And it's such a light color that I do end up stamping that twice. That turns out so pretty. It's very pale. And I'll go ahead and turn the panel and stamp out the next one. Okay, for the next piece, sorry my head gets in the shot here, but I had to look right directly over that stamp. But I'm going to do this in dark, and this just puts down the shadows on the little stem and leaves. My hair is just very slowly growing back out. I'm just able to put some of it in a ponytail just to keep it out of my eyes. I cannot stand it when my hair flips in my eyes when I'm trying to work on my cards. In an older video, I mentioned that I had gone through chemo and lost my hair, and I'm very happy to have it back, but it's just taking a very long time to grow out. For my next two panels, I'm going to be stamping out the leaves. It comes with 2 different sized leaves, and it also comes with some very cute berries. I thought that would be the perfect element for a Christmas card. So I'm just trying to arrange them on this panel so that I can flip the panel over and stamp them out twice on each card panel. I'm stamping the little berries. They have the outline for those in black. And then the leaves I'm just stamping in a dark green. And this is where these smaller stamp pads come in handy, because you can just get right where you need to and add different colors. So here I'm doing the dark green. And that looks so pretty. The next layer puts down the base color again. I'm going to do the lightest green on this. And I'm also going to stamp out the next layer for the berries. The top one's kind of an outline, so that's going to be black. And then the bottom, the smaller berries, I'm going to do in red, because there's just 2 pieces to that berry set. And then again, like I said, I'm going in with a light green to put down a base layer for the leaves. So fun to see how they turn out. And I'm just putting on another layer here just to darken it a bit. So I turned the panel, and for these leaves, I decided to go with a lighter green just to see how that works out. And I'm using the same inks on the berries. And I do like that lighter ink a bit better. I stamp it up twice, but that's what I'm going to use on the other panel of leaves as well. Now for the last layer of the leaves, I'm using a medium green color, something in between the darkest green I have there and the lightest green. And then I'm going to put down more red for the last of these little berries. I simply love Altenew's beautiful layering sets, and I think they're going to be on the Christmas list that I'm going to be handing to my husband this year. I did purchase the coordinating dies for this set just because it is one of my favorites. So the next step is cutting all of these beautiful flowers and leaves and berries out. It's so fun to see how they cut out so beautifully with a little white border around the edge. I'm not going to make you sit through all of the die cutting because that did take a while. So I'm moving on to prepare my sentiment. And I have an older block that says, "Have yourself a merry little Christmas." And I just love this sentiment. And I'm using the faux stitch dies to cut out the main panel as well as the sentiment. I'm using some fun foam, and I'm going to cut out a piece of that so that I can pop up my sentiment a little bit. And I just cut it out so it's a little bit smaller than my sentiment panel. I'm using some score tape on the back of that. Score tape is a very strong adhesive, so I like to use that on the back of my fun foam. It's going to keep it in place. This is the only piece of my card that I have glued together. The next part is the placement, and I'm just pulling out all of my pretty die cuts, and I'm just trying to figure out how I want them on my card. And I did go ahead and buy a jewel picker. Jennifer McGuire suggested this, and it's just a few bucks, and it's so worth it. I bought mine from Amazon. And it just helps you move things around, and if you're putting on sequins, it helps you pick them up. I just love mine. Now that I've figured out the placement of all of these different elements, and it did take me a while, I'm not going to make you sit through that, but I'm using some dot liner, and I'm just putting that on the back of some of these larger elements. But for the smaller elements, the berries, I'm using my multimedia mat for that, and that's a very strong adhesive too. I really love that stuff. Especially since I've put it in this Doris bottle. It just flows very well for me now. I've always had trouble with that in the past, but these new Doris bottles are really great. It's actually the same multimedia mat bottle, but it's just the nozzle that I've changed out, and these nozzles are just exceptional. They have a pin that you put in the top to keep the glue from drying out. I forgot to film these little ferns that you see right here in my hand, so I went back, and it was off camera, I apologize for that, but I stamped those out because I realized that I had missed those. So I did end up using every single stamp in this stamp set. Now I'm going to add more score tape to the back of my sentiment and attach that. And then I go ahead and add a few more berries and my last little flower bud on top of that. Now I'm going to flip my card panel around and very carefully trim off the flowers that are hanging off the edge. It does help to have long scissors like this just to get a good straight line. I'm adding even a few more berries because I think they just look charming and add a lot to the card. To add a little more interest, I've pulled out my clear glitter Spectrum Noir pen. I'm just adding glitter just to this little flower bud here. It's really hard to catch the sparkle with the camera, but it sure does look pretty and adds a lot to the card. I'm also going to use some glossy accents just over the berries, and I dab it off onto a piece of scrap paper just to get the flow going, and then I can go ahead and add it to these little berries. It goes on looking kind of hazy, but when it dries, it's very clear and pretty. Make sure that you give it enough time to dry. I gave this card a few hours. I don't know if it needs that much, but I just didn't want to ruin my card. So I put mine out of the way so that I didn't accidentally set something on top of it and smear the glossy accents, or my kids getting a hold of it and looking at the pretty berries, wanting to touch them. I'm using some Nina Solar White 110-pound cardstock for the card base. And it's going to be a top folding card. And I was glad I remembered to put my stamp on the back before I attached my card panel. I didn't want to flatten the berries at all. So I'm just adding the tape to my card base, and then I can go ahead and attach my main panel. So go and look in your stamp stash and see if you have any pretty flower stamps that you can alter into a Christmas card. I have more Christmas card videos to come. I'm having a blast making Christmas cards this year, and I hope you all are too. Please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can also click on the bell if you'd like to be notified when I publish a new video. And don't forget to share this video on your favorite social media. Thank you so much for joining me. Bye!